Wow.
I was an accountant, okay? Spreadsheets are my thing.
If you didn't think you could bring accountancy into writing, you would be wrong.
Everyone loves a sum if.
Welcome to the Plotcast. I'm your host, Char from the Plottery. I'll help you plant little but mighty seeds of motivation so you can watch your ideas grow into beautiful, beautiful novels. Welcome back to the Plotcast. I am here with Jasmina again. Today...
Lucky you.
Today, we will be talking about, I would say this is the most popular question on every writer's mind, and that is how to keep yourself writing. Yeah, that's a toughie, isn't it?
Gentle sobs. Gentle sobs. Get your box of Kleenex ready.
Yeah, this is, oh God, this topic, man. I feel like this is, whenever I put up an ask box on Instagram or anything really where people message me, most of the time they'll be like, how do I just sit down and write? How do I keep doing it? How do I not get stuck? How do I...
Yeah, or like, how do I work around a busy schedule? Things like that. Yeah, because finding time and motivation is very difficult.
We've all been there. There's no shame in it, okay? I know a lot of writers can feel guilt over that and feel like they're not real writers because they struggle with it so much. But I do think there is a certain kind of pressure that we also put ourselves under and a standard that we kind of hold ourselves up to when we don't write and when we see other people online killing it, or you know, one of your best friends wrote 29 books and you were just like sitting at 2.
What? Who dis? New phone, who dis?
So Jasmina, tell us your secret.
L'Oreal. Yeah, just washing my hair. So actually, I was saying to Char, I normally have no problem with motivation, but lately I've been struggling to commit to one of my projects. I have started 6 new books since March.
Oh my God.
I just keep having ideas and jumping around, and I finally forced myself to sit down and work on the final book in a trilogy that I'm writing. And what has really helped with that, and I am gonna get judged for this, is Pinterest. I will not lie. Scrolling through Pinterest inspo and just finding aesthetic vibey things that just renews my inspiration, my excitement for the project, and creating a playlist for the book, because I'll find a song that embodies a scene and it really makes me excited to write that scene. So I'll just listen to that song on repeat while I'm walking my dog or something, and I will not lie to you, there's a bit of a dramatic death, at the end of Becoming Dangerous. And I found a song that perfectly encapsulated that scene. I started crying on my dog walk listening to it because I was so emotionally attached to the character already. I was like, you can't have her die. Yeah, so playlist helps motivate me. I think the biggest misconception is that you should have a writing routine and stick to it.
Oh, yeah.
Because nothing... try and make one. If you can stick to it, great. It's good to try and make space for writing, but don't beat yourself up if you can't do it every day. If you have to miss a day at the gym, if you have to, I don't know, what else do people do?
Routinely,
yeah. If you can't read on a certain day because you're just really busy with work, life gets in the way. And I think the advice to have a writing routine ends up with a lot of people beating themselves up about it and getting down on themselves and being like, I'm not a real writer because I don't write every day. That is not true. Yeah,
I think the advice to stick to a writing routine is the thing I hate the most. That's the advice that I absolutely cannot stand when it comes to writing. Whenever someone's like, asking for help. "Oh, how do I write more?" And someone says, "Oh, write every day, even if blah 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 blah." Blah." No,
Mm-mm.
don't do that to yourself, because like that way you're just forcing yourself, and then you're just going to guilt trip yourself and beat yourself up about it, and then that's just gonna make you hate writing.
Yeah.
So
I think what you can do is be like, oh, I know I have an hour free tomorrow and I'm going to try and write during that time. So that you're making space in your head for writing. But if you don't manage to do it, it's all good. It's fine.
mhm.
Um,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
I used to be adamant about having a writing routine. Like I wrote for an hour every morning, which granted is how I wrote like over a million words one year. I have a little spreadsheet where I track my word count every month
Of
and
course
year
you
because
do.
I love a spreadsheet. And yeah, I wrote a lot. I'm not saying it was good,
Mhm.
but I also happened to be in a mood to write that year. I'm not so much in the mood this year, and that's fine. There are going to be peaks and troughs. If you're committed to a long-term like writing career, then it just doesn't have to be every day. Like it will all add up. All the effort you put in over the course of months and years, it will add up.
Mhm. Yeah, I want to just quickly go back to what you were actually saying about music playlists and
Mm.
Pinterest boards. I find that really, really valuable. Maybe not the Pinterest. I used to really love Pinterest, and I might go back to it because it kind of depends on what project I'm writing. Like sometimes I do struggle to visualize things, and then Pinterest comes really in
Yeah.
handy with that sort of thing and giving some ideas and whatnot. But music playlists are something I absolutely could not write without. I think like I have a playlist for every single project that I
Yeah.
write. Sometimes even like individual characters or relationships within that project. And I actually have this little routine sometimes when I'm like, I don't know, I went to the gym in the city and I really want to write for the rest of the day. And so on my drive back, I will put my project playlist on to my car
Yeah.
ride and just hype myself up. And by the time I'm home, I'm like, oh, I need to write, I need to write.
Yeah, it's like the way people would listen to a gym playlist to like get
Yeah,
themselves
yeah.
hyped for that. And that's what I'll do is like I'll take Cleo on her walk and by the time I get home I've listened to the playlist and I'm really excited to
Yeah, and then
write.
you're hyped to write.
Um
And
yeah.
then I also you write in silence, I think, don't you?
Um Usually I write in silence. Sometimes I will play like the same song if it like perfectly
That's
encapsulates
it.
what I'm feeling. I'll play the same single song on
That's it.
repeat.
That's literally
Yeah.
what I was getting to. I'm like, I always try to find the perfect song that encapsulates that scene or that at least, sort of puts me in that headspace. And then I'll just repeat that like until that scene is done or until that chapter is finished.
Yeah. Yeah, I usually have like one for a chapter, but sometimes I write in silence just because my ADHD is like I cannot deal with extra stimulus right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another thing I would say that I like to do, which it kind of depends what genres you like to write, but I don't always work on that. I try not to work on multiple books at once.
hmm
I try. But because I write poetry as well, I can take time away from my main project and sort of refresh myself by writing a poem. And it's a good self-contained project because I can get a first draft out of a poem like within an hour.
hmm
And so I feel like a sense of completion, which is really satisfying. And sort of midway to 3/4 of the way through a book, you can really be lacking that sort of sense of accomplishment. So writing a short story or a poem or even just doing a little writing exercise can be a good way to renew your inspiration or like get a sense of accomplishment with your writing.
Yeah, I like that. Like a little short what is the reprieve?
Reprieve. Yeah.
Reprieve. I was like, there were so many words just coming at me, and I was like,
Yeah.
wait, which one is it? Yeah, a short reprieve from like a really long project. That's a good idea to sort of just get yourself fired up again. I always celebrate like every chapter that I've finished. I'm like, yeah, that's another one down. And then I make like this big spectacle of going into my chapter treatment and updating it and putting like a tick next to it. Like, yeah.
Yeah. I will like go into my word tracker spreadsheet and like update the word count for that chapter, and then it updates like my average word count for each chapter and like what my projected word count is going to be for the book based on the number of chapters. It's a little obsessive. I
Wow.
was an accountant, okay? Spreadsheets are my thing. um,
That's amazing. If you didn't think you could bring accountancy into writing, you would be wrong.
yeah. Everyone loves a SUMIF formula. Refreshing your outline is also, I thought you were going to say that when you said you go into your like chapter
Oh,
tracker, but
yeah,
yeah,
I
like
do
going
that.
back and I think one of the main arguments people have against plotting is they're like, I don't want like a rigid structure.
Mm,
Um, I kind of like to take things as they come, and a outline should be a living document that changes
yes.
as you go. So after every chapter, or while I'm writing the chapter, I'll take notes of things that I might
Mm,
want to add to future chapters, and I will go into my chapter outline. It might be that I'm adding an entirely extra chapter or just a little like tidbit to a different chapter that I've already plotted.
yeah.
Or maybe I am revising like a whole chunk of chapters, because in a recent chapter I wrote, two of the characters, like, they just fell in love, man. They weren't supposed to, but they did. And so now I have to like revise their entire, they just had chemistry. I was like, damn, if I went on a first date like this, life would be great. Except that he's the villain.
Oh, okay.
So
Of course.
that does suck. Yeah, so I've been revising all their chapters together to like accommodate the fact that they're
Uh-huh.
now, yeah, romantically attached.
Yeah, I very much agree with the outline thing. I think like that's a huge misconception in the community. And I hate like I keep seeing these reels. You'll know who I'm talking about. But I keep seeing these reels about like
Is it
yeah, that's it.
okay?
I'm
Just
glad
mime one thing and you know.
I'm glad they can't see the video here.
Yeah.
We're being mean right now. But no, that I keep saying like this advice of like you must use this beat sheet and you must stick to this outline and you must keep a good structure of your book or
Mm-mm.
whatever. And once you plot it, that's what you have to stick to. You can't pants your way through anything, whatever. And I'm just like, oh my God. Literally, I think the first draft, in my opinion anyway, is getting to know your characters and getting to know your
Yeah.
story and what you're writing and whatever. Again, you can be more on the spectrum of like you're more of a outliner,
Dare I say a
plotter,
plotter?
a plotter, or you're more of a pantser, and that's okay. But like, you shouldn't think that you have to stick to your outline. And I say this to all of
Yeah.
my clients. I think I mentioned this, but without fail, every single one of my clients, there comes a point when they ask me on one of our calls, like, um, I wrote this in the outline, but then I thought that this might be a better idea. Is that bad that I changed it? And I'm like, no, your new
Yeah.
idea is so much better. Please change it.
Yeah, because with every chapter, you're getting to know your characters and the story better. And so, with that understanding of your characters, what they do down the line might change
hmm
because you might see a facet of their motivation that you didn't know before. And you're like, well, that changes how they're going to act when confronted
hmm
with this situation.
Yeah, I think
Um,
I've experienced that with every project I've written, where every project I say like I've written 29 of them. I've written
oh
two.
my.
I've written two. But yeah, I experienced that with both of them where it's just like you get to know so much about your characters by the end of the first book or the first draft or whatever. Um, that it's inevitable that your outline's going to change and you're going to have to adjust a few things here and there or add things in or take things out or whatever. And that shouldn't be the end of the world. Like, I think people are so hell-bent on like your first draft needs to be as good as possible, or it needs to be as close to the final product as possible so you can just go and fix some sentences and that'll be it, ready for publishing. But
If
um
only.
if only. Yeah, I think if there's one valuable thing that you should change in your mindset when it comes to writing first drafts, is that they are first drafts. Like, you are not an exception to the rule of you're never going to have to go and fix anything.
Wow. Oh, damn, my hair's up. I was going to flip it otherwise. Um,
No, but you still go and you edit things and you add things and you
yeah.
change things
Yeah,
in your
of
chapter
course.
treatment and whatever. But it's never going to be like, oh, I'm going to plot this so perfectly that I'll not have to go and do any edits and whatever. And I think everyone, or at least most people, think that they are going to be the exception to that. Like, they're like, yeah,
Yeah.
I know the rule, but I think I can do it.
Yeah, I think that just speaks to, maybe we can address this in some other episode, this
Mhm.
like tons of misconceptions about natural talent when it comes to writing, and that either you have it or you don't. Yeah, the idea that either you are like a born writer or you're not, and you're going to be the exception to every rule, or you can't write.
Mhm.
And we can address that at some other point, because that drives me insane. But yeah, refreshing your outline is a good way to take a break from your project while still working on it, and maybe renew your motivation. I think another thing that can be really helpful, which we kind of touched upon but didn't really say, is like setting measurable goals where you like break down the overall project of writing a book into smaller goals. So for you, that's like creating this planner of the chapters, and like each time you finish a chapter, you tick it
Ticket,
off.
yeah.
And so that makes everything feel a little more achievable, as opposed to just being like, I'm gonna write a book and I'll tick that box when I finish writing the entire book.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I, on my little goal planner spreadsheet, sorry, yeah, more spreadsheets, plan like working on a book, I will break down every step of it, from like filling in each individual character worksheet, like doing my plot grid, my world building worksheet, each draft, stuff like that, because just having like more achievable, measurable goals will give you a sense of accomplishment as you work, which helps you stay motivated.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I totally get that. I like that. I yeah, I love chapter outlines though. I have to say that's my
Oh yeah.
go-to. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's my way of orientating myself. Like, I used to have like these whole documents and workspaces and whatever, with character mood boards and character sheets and world building and backstory and blah 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 blah, blah, whatever I needed. But I've really since sort of moved into just having chapter treatments, because it's just this one document. Usually it's around like 20 pages, but I put all of my ideas, my beats, my tracking, all of it is in that one document. And I think that's like a for me, I'm always about like simplicity, and like I don't want to overwhelm myself with all of these things that I need to keep track of or whatever. And so it's just this one document, and if I need to research something, I will put it at the end of the relevant chapter that I need to do research for or
Yeah.
whatever. And it really just helps sort of not overwhelm me. If you are somebody that's like, you're maybe not that inclined to
Spreadsheets.
follow goals and spreadsheets and things like that,
Yeah.
I would recommend just like simplify it for yourself and have one space where you can kind of have a clear head.
Mm.
But you don't have to put pressure on like, I have to achieve this goal by this time or whatever. You know, like how they say
Yeah.
you should do smart goals, where it's like, I'm gonna break this down into smaller goals and then have like a time limit on each of them, and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So if you're not that kind of person, and I'm not, I usually just like keep track of it in a chapter treatment, and just sort of make sure that I am actually making progress on it from time to time.
Yeah.
But yeah, updating the chapter treatment, I actually do that every like, I want to say like every 20,000 words that I write or so, I will break away and I will go back to the chapter treatment and see what's changed, what's different, if I need to update any of them, and put notes or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a really handy piece of advice, I think.
We should definitely do an episode on like how to stay organized as a writer, because I think you and I have very differing methods. It'd be interesting to I'm not gonna get into how my, well, I think you have an idea, but yeah,
Yeah.
that would be because staying on top of um everything you're planning for a book can be difficult, and especially if there is like heavy world building involved for fantasy, because so many writers end up retconning what they've put in a book by contradicting themselves. So we should talk about that at some point. But anyways,
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good idea. If you would like to see that, you can leave us a comment, whatever platform this is on. That would be
yeah.
nice. And tell us if you want to see that. Okay, yeah. Any so I guess, I mean, this podcast was mostly about like how to keep yourself writing. We've kind of talked about like keeping, first of all, keeping yourself organized and knowing where you are heading. I think that's really important. So when we do talk about the chapter treatments and stuff, it's not even just about keeping track of your progress. It's also about knowing where you're headed.
Yep.
So like
To avoid
having,
writer's block.
exactly. So like not having, I think a lot of writers have this problem where they're like, oh, I kind of know the big beats of the story, so I'm just going to start writing. And then you get to the middle and you're like, what happens here? I have no idea. So in order to avoid that, try to do a little bit more plotting if that's the kind of thing you get stuck on. And other than obviously being very clear on your process and your goals and what your project should be, I think it's also just important to keep your mindset in check so that you're not like forcing yourself to write or to keep a routine like we spoke about, but that you are actually enjoying the process of writing. So again, do music playlists, do Pinterest boards, do whatever works for you, but make sure that you are actually finding enjoyment out of the project. Because if you're not, if it just feels like a chore, if it just feels like a task that you need to do, then what is the point?
Yeah. I mean, I do sometimes, if it's been like a few weeks since I've written, I will force myself to write, even if I don't want to. But if I notice it's really not working out, I will stop. But there are just sometimes things where you're like, I have to get over that first bump of, especially if you've taken time away from writing, there can be like a fear of, have I lost my skill? And so you might come up with excuses to avoid doing it. Don't let it become a daily chore. That's
I went through that sort of thing when I was working on Statue of a Woman, and it was like after every single chapter that I would finish, I would take like a week off, and then I would have like this overwhelming fear of like, oh my god, I'm not going to be able to write the next chapter because it's so difficult. And then I would start writing it and I would be like, no, it's just like every other chapter you've written.
Yeah.
But it happened without fail after every chapter. So I do think one of my clients actually gave me this tip, because she does this, is every time you finish a chapter, at least write the first paragraph to the next one, so that you have started something, so that it's not a blank page that you're staring at when you started.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good practical tip.
That is also a good way of avoiding editing while writing, because it means if you've written that first paragraph, when you then go to write that chapter, rather than going back and rereading the previous chapter to like catch yourself up on where you are, you'll just read that paragraph.
Yeah, you have context.
And that way you don't fall into the trap of going back to reread the previous chapter and then spending the whole day editing it and not actually writing anything new. I think one of the biggest ways you can hold yourself back from writing is by self-editing while you're in the process of drafting still. Like, save the edits for the end.
Yeah. And again, let me refer back to the chapter treatment. If I do allow myself to sometimes read back the stuff that I've written if I haven't written for a while or something and I need a refresher. And then usually while I'm doing that, if I ever notice like, I kind of want to change that, like, I don't think this is going to work anymore, I put it in the chapter treatment, not actually change it in the manuscript. I just make a note of it, like, you're gonna change this in the next revision.
Edit. Yeah, exactly. Like, I'll have a running list while I'm working on the book. So say now that these two characters are in love, I'm like, well, that kind of changes a couple things. Even in the second book, I need to go back and change now, where they like allude to each other and speak about each other, and because of the nature of their relationship, one of them is actually aware of the other one and is kind of already in love with her, so I need to fix that.
You need to update that.
Yeah, I need to like sprinkle the little seeds of hints in there for a good payoff in book 3.
Good. I mean, I think that kind of covers it. Hopefully you found this at least a little bit helpful. It's I think it's a very individualistic process too, to discover what works for you and what kind of methods, So don't, I would say maybe one last piece of advice is don't rely on the stuff that you hear online. Even what we are saying in this podcast, like, it might not work for you. You might have a completely different approach to things.
Excuse you, my word is gospel.
I doubt it. But yeah, don't rely on especially like if you hear really extremist advice
Yeah.
online, like you shouldn't do this or you shouldn't do that, or like you're not a writer if
Yeah.
you do this, or if you write in this program or whatever. Don't listen to that, because that is just
Yeah.
like, those are just marketing tactics. They actually don't have your best sort of writing self in mind. You're the only one that can actually figure out the precise method that works for you, and it can be taking little things, little advice from, that you hear online, and patching it together into your own little Frankenstein method of writing. Hello, listener. It's time for us to judge a book by its cover. Have we got what it takes to uncover the true story without looking at its pages? Well, let's find out. Okay, we've got a book that Jasmina actually hasn't read. So
yeah, now I've got my audiobooks. I'm like
Yeah.
powering through. I've already read 7 books in this month, and it's only the 10th. So
what the hell?
I have no life, Char. I just listen to audiobooks now.
I kind of love that. Okay, so the book cover that we are going to be talking about is Meet Me at a Rainbow Corner by Celia Imrie, I think. I don't know if I've pronounced that right. But to describe it, it is basically a very sort of teal background, and it's got a little vintage golden frame around it. The center of the cover has like a very European street corner, with American and British flags on the windows and 2 people dancing in front of it. And there is also planes in the background, which
those are Spitfires.
Which gives me World War vibes. And
yeah, Spitfires were World War II, I think. Produced in Birmingham. Yeah,
okay.
Good
Wow.
I might be completely wrong, actually. I'm just like, I'm an authority.
No, I was going to say World War
teachers.
II. I wasn't going to say World War II based on research or facts that I know, just vibes. But I definitely
someone out there is going to be like, Jasmina, you Spitfires are not World War II. I swear, they're the thing from the Battle of Britain.
They are.
I don't know history.
I doubt that they would have been the first one anyway.
Yeah.
So, what else do we have here?
The little quote at the bottom, the little tagline, where you can dance your fears away today and forget the heartbreak of tomorrow.
Yeah, so I do think it's definitely a war story, a historical sort of World War II story, and I like that it's not like your usual tragic sort of thing, like it looks very much like it's gonna be a upbeat light book somehow. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like it doesn't
despite
being set in the World War.
I don't know if it's just the like Art Deco vibes of the frame, but it's making me think of like a woman being sent to the French Riviera because she has hysteria or something, even though that's clearly not what it's about. But it's giving Fitzgerald.
Yeah, I get that.
So we're getting kind of hotel vibes maybe from this building, or like,
well, okay, I think
embassy?
What's interesting, it could be an embassy, it could be like for refugees of the war, and I think it's interesting that there are American and British flags. I've actually watched a TV series where like it was like following an American sort of activist who came over to I think it was France, to sort of help build shelters and refuges for like people who are escaping war from Germany and that sort of thing. So I think it's maybe to do with that. I wonder if it's like one of the characters is like that. I don't know.
It looks like quite a nice building, and I don't think that's the sort of thing they would have quickly put together. It might be like a repurposed building for that. Mm-hmm. For those ends? I don't know.
Well, they were staying in a very nice building in a TV show that I watched, so I don't know. But that does look very much like a street corner center embassy type of thing, definitely.
Yeah. I'm trying to like squint at the guy. Looks like he's wearing a little soldier's hat, maybe. So maybe we've got like one of the characters is an American soldier or something, and one of the characters is
like an activist woman.
An English, and even though they know they'll be parted because of the war, heartbreak of tomorrow. They're gonna, party it up, dance their fears away.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
At this undisclosed location.
Yeah, I feel like it's going to be a very heartwarming story about like survivors of the war, or how they sort of handled it back in the day. Because I do know, like, every time we look back at the war, it's all like doom and gloom. But I do think, like, I mean, if you think about really big events that we've gone through recently, we all kind of take them in humor all the time. Like the pandemic, it was all jokes and stuff, even though it's like
It's horrific.
it's a horrific time,
Yeah.
right? But I feel like this book might take that approach of like, you would probably find time to still have fun and be a human.
As much as possible, yeah.
That was a downer. um, Let me read the blurb for this.
Yeah.
London, 1944. The air raid sirens are blaring, the bombers are hovering.
Lighthearted.
England has been at war with Germany for 4 years and there's no sign of peace coming. Dot Gallagher, newly arrived from Liverpool to offer her services as a nurse, hurries from her Red Cross hostel to the tube station to join the crowds of people taking shelter. A group of GIs have started dancing around a wind-up gramophone, and it doesn't take long for Dot to join them. As she jives along with one of the American soldiers, he tells her about Rainbow Corner, a social club in Piccadilly for US troops. There is always a demand for dance hostesses there, women who know how to jitterbug and rock and roll, to dance with the soldiers. Would Dot like to apply? As Dot discovers, Rainbow Corner is like no other place, an oasis in London where once inside, the constraints of wartime Britain disappear. There's no rationing, all luxuries are available, including a constant stream of donuts, chewing gum, and cola. There are restaurants and cafes, boxing matches and movies, and, much to Dot's delight, a huge dance hall. Rather like an embassy, Rainbow Corner is essentially a plot of America in central London. Dot becomes firm friends with many of the other hostesses, and in particular with Lily, who works for the Colonel. Meet Me at Rainbow Corner follows the lives of Dot, Lily, and their friends as they dance the nights away, fall in and out of love, and navigate the horrors of war. Lily goes on a secret mission with her Colonel to France. Right, yay, France! I got something.
This is a long blurb.
It's so long. And so Lily goes on a secret mission with her Colonel to France, and Dot becomes pregnant and returns to Liverpool. When the war is over, they are reunited, having traveled by boat to the U.S. with countless of other war brides to meet their repatriated. I can't read.
Basically, you don't need to read the book now.
Hey, listener, we're about to answer some audience questions. Did you know you could submit questions every month to be answered right here on the Plotcast? You can do this by following my Instagram account at @Plottery and keeping an eye on my end-of-month Q&A boxes in my Instagram stories. Make sure to submit a good one, and we might answer it on the next episode. Alright, let's get back into it. Azatul Ainer. I think that's the username. I'm so sorry. I'm butchering the usernames.
It was just the look on your face when you said it.
But they're asking, have you ever dealt with procrastination before you write something?
I don't think I really procrastinate. If I'm like, I don't know.
You're either like, I'm gonna write, or I'm just not gonna write.
Yeah, like if I have a committed project in mind, I'm all about it. Like, I will. We both know about the 6-day book. Like, I will dead out like 20,000 words a day. Yeah, I've never really tried to do other things to avoid writing. I've had to put off writing because I've had my job to do instead of writing, but that's not really procrastinating. That's just being responsible or whatever.
Yeah, me too. I think I've been doing that recently. It's like I keep putting work first, and then writing sort of becomes like a respite, like a reward, sort of like, I get to do writing now. A little treat.
Either that or iced coffee. Yeah.
But I did used to procrastinate, I think, when I first started writing. But this was like before I even started the Plottery. I think my turning point was definitely like writing Statue of a Woman. That was when I sort of started.
I think the procrastination arises from self-doubt usually.
Mm-hmm.
So if you haven't, you're saying like with your earlier attempts at writing, before you had the confidence that you could write a whole book,
Mm.
you might have avoided doing it because you were like, well, what if I prove to myself that I can't write a book? I wrote my first book when I was like 9, so I don't really remember that feeling. But yeah, now I'm just like, this might be garbage, but I'm just gonna word vomit onto a page. No shame, because no one has to see it at the end of the day if I don't want them to.
Yeah, I lost what I was gonna say.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
You can set fire to the dumpster I live in later if that helps.
That's okay. Procrastination, in terms of like me having procrastinated, yes, I do think like, I was gonna say that I think ever since I actually finished a full coherent draft. I say coherent because I did finish a draft before I did Statue of a Woman, but it was like all over the place, so I'm not calling that coherent. But ever since I finished a coherent draft of a book, I think writing has just become so much easier and so much less like less of a daunting task. And it's not like, because I know I can do it now, and it's like, yeah, whatever, like I'm writing.
Exactly. You've banished the imposter syndrome for the most part, and that makes it so much easier to confront a blank page.
Yeah, but I definitely used to do it when I first started out, and I do think it was in part, it was a lot about just not having the confidence because I've never done it before, and I think that's normal. But also, I think another part of it was just that I didn't have the skill set, and that was like, I don't know, like I knew stuff, I knew things, but you can't really gain the skills if you don't have the experience, which is like that paradox. But I think just like even writing that non-coherent draft helped me so much to like. Just say I've written so many words, and I've done, whatever, even if it was a struggle at times to start and to keep going. But
and that goes back to that misconception of either you have it or you don't. Like you would never, I will probably say this in like almost every episode of this podcast that we do, but you would never sit down in front of a canvas for the first time and expect to be like Titian or Van Gogh or something like that. Like, you would expect it to be rubbish. But there's this weird thing with writing where people don't think of it as a craft, and you have to put in the hours to develop the skills. So the only way I think you'll overcome that self-doubt is just
write
out some garbage, churn out some rubbish, and never show it to anyone. And you'll get better.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I definitely think it pays to try to weed out what your root cause is for the procrastination, because some people procrastinate because of the fear, some procrastinate because they don't have the skills, the confidence, and some people procrastinate just because it's maybe not something that they actually want to do. It's just like a trend that they've seen online. So make sure that you know why, or at least try to dig into, like self-analyze and keep asking yourself why it is that you're finding it so hard. Okay, next question is a really easy one. It's from EJ Writes, and they're asking, do you find it easier to write if you have a drink or a snack with you?
I like my little ritual of making my cup of tea before I write, but then I always forget about it once I'm writing.
And it cools down? Yeah.
Yeah. I have blasphemed. I microwave my tea. But yeah, I can't. Once I'm like in the flow of writing, my hyperfixation kicks in. I'm not stopping to pick up a beverage.
I was gonna say,
I love making my tea beforehand.
I was gonna say, I don't think I actually have a ritual to starting writing other than finding a song. Like that's the thing for me.
Yeah.
Because I always write with background noise. Well, not always, but like most of the time when I'm like, okay, I'm gonna write, I find a nice song or whatever. But I don't really like, if I have snacks, I'll have them, but it's not something that I consciously think about or find it easier or whatever. I always have water with me, obviously, but that's just whatever. So no, I guess not. It doesn't really matter to me.
No, I like a good mug. I really like a good mug. So I pick my mug of the day. I make my cup of tea and then I forsake it.
Cute. Okay, and we'll do one last question. And that is by Melody of Books, and they're asking, should I abandon my story? It's not giving me joy anymore, or should I just spice it up?
That is really hard to give advice on without context. I think if it's not bringing you joy, but you can think of a way to adapt it that would make you enjoy it again, do it. I think you could also table it and go work on something else and then come back to it and see if you've renewed your interest in it. And if not, maybe you do abandon it. Like, we've all...
Abandoned projects, yeah.
Yeah, abandoned, like, scrapped books. And it's sad, especially if you've written, like...
a lot.
50,000 words or something. It's always heartbreaking. But you didn't gain nothing from that experience. You still practiced writing. You learned about your preferences as a writer, what you don't like to write. Maybe it made you think about what you do want to write. So it's still a valuable experience, even if it doesn't come to fruition as a whole book.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think just having space from a project is so helpful. So you should never feel bad about like tabling something for now to work on something else, because sometimes you do need like a bit of a palate cleanser and a bit of space from that project. And I did that with the Wonky Shapes of Liam. Like I told you, that was the incoherent project. I did like 80 or 90,000 words on it. And then I was like, this is a mess and I can't deal with it right now. I'm not in the right mindset. I don't have the right skills for it. I'm going to do something completely different. And then I wrote an entire different project and that was fine. Like I didn't have that many issues with that one. Maybe because I wrote it chronologically.
I wonder.
But now I'm back to the Wonky Shapes of Liam, and it's been I think 2 or 3 years now since I've put it down. And I cannot tell you the difference that it's made to have that space and just allow myself to grow as a person and as a writer, and now seeing the potential that project has that I would not have seen back then. Like there's no way that the book would pan out the way that it is right now if I had tried to force writing it back then. So I do think if there is something in you telling you that this is just not something that you can work on right now, then just shelve it for later and work on something else to refresh your mind, to refresh your just motivation and energy for writing and your passion. Because sometimes if we get stuck in things and they're not quite working out right now for whatever reason that is, it can really bring you down. So yeah, maybe just work on something, even do like a short story palette cleanser or something like that. But yeah, if you are not feeling it, don't force it. And if you want to restructure it, I would again say giving it some space is probably a good idea, because it's really difficult to restructure a project that you have already been working on and that you already have like dead set ways in. And you're like, because I know when I was trying to fix the Wonky Shapes of Liam back then, I could not part myself with certain scenes, certain aspects, certain characters, moments, whatever. I was like, no, this is crucial to the story. But forward 3 years later, and I am killing darlings so easily. Like I just
seriously, like she's got a machete.
I slashed their necks, and it is done. It is so easy now to just be like, no, this brings nothing to the story. But it's just because I've had that space from it. So.
Well, you say it's not just because you've had that space.
Well, it's also like
you've grown so much as a writer, and your job is to think about writing and the mechanics of writing. So you've gotten really good at that. So it's unsurprising that you're able to be merciless. And I think once you've edited a few times, it's easier to be hard on yourself as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
say a few times, like we've only edited twice or something. I've only ever edited 2 books in my 8-year career.
Disclaimer, she definitely hasn't, guys. She's edited a lot more than that. So if you want to work with her, you can do that.
Thank you. It was 5. Sorry, I'll stop.
Stop it. You're tarnishing our name.
No, just mine. You're delicious.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we better end this episode.
Before things get spicy.
Thanks for listening to the Plotcast. If you want more writing tips and tricks, head over to my YouTube channel. Until next time.